Couple of articles, couple of sites were reporting on this. They were reporting that massive numbers of Aussies are living below the poverty line or in poverty. It wasn't just Nine News covering it. There's a couple of other sites covered it. I mean, it may have been part of other media groups owned by Channel 9, possibly. Um, we had a look at various articles over the last couple of weeks about cost of living concerns, people going into retirement without enough money for a comfortable retirement, people entering retirement without being property owners or like without having a home, they're being renters, etc. Problems in particular for women entering retirement, which it'll far due to much reduced superannuation levels, etc. There's a problem in society, somewhat, I guess. I mean, these problems, I guess, will never go away, and conditions of living, so living conditions for the impoverished is still a lot better than, I guess, most people were living in 100 years ago. It still doesn't make it any better. That, I mean, still doesn't mean it's a good thing. We had 27.5 million people in the country, according to the stats the other week. We've got 1 in 7 Australians below the poverty line, which is less than half the median income. That's more like $75,000 a year, I think, is the median, or 86 now, is the median income. 3.7 million people. Now, 1 in 7, that's more than 10%. I mean, I prefer percentages. So 3.7 million, that's, yeah, well north of 10%. That's quite a large percentage. Now, I don't know what other nations are like, but to me, that stands out as something, well, all poverty should be addressed. But you don't stop to think that that many people are in poverty, impoverished in a country like Australia. I mean, there are communities where impoverished conditions are more likely, such as Aboriginal communities. They will, not traditionally, they will tend to have lower socioeconomic status. There are the working class communities that grew up around factories or particular industries. They suffered when those industries left or collapsed. And so, yep, you've got suburbs that in the major cities that traditionally people look at as being, well, blue collar suburbs, or now impoverished suburbs as those industries have left and not much else has moved in. And the concern is that it's growing. Now, since 2023, it showed a jump of nearly 500,000 people. We also had massive migration as well, and some of them recent migrants, if they're struggling to find work, may also be in this position. And so some of that as well. We did have a very, very famous declaration on poverty, as you can see there, by Bob Hawke back in 1990 it wasn't 1990. In 1987, he made the comment of the statement that by 1990, no Australian child will be living in poverty. It's one of those famous quotes out of Australian politics, and one of those famous quotes out of Australian politics that never came to pass. So sadly, we never got to the point of no Australian child living in poverty by 1990 or any other time, but it was still important and good to get the focus on the conditions that led to poverty and everything else. And I mean, people might talk about the ASPC ads with Sarah McLachlan as being heart-rending ads on American TV. Australian TV had, I mean, depending on where you lived, I know I certainly saw them, I think the Smith family were the ones that did the ads. There was a series of ads, and I mean, the Salvos might have done it too, but I think the Smith family are the ones I saw, of basically a school kid, primary age school kid, 3 or 4 variations on the ad. Basically, the kids struggling to get uniforms, school bags, all this sort of stuff, and you can quite clearly see the implied statement that this kid's going to get bullied, they're struggling, they're going to fall behind, that it's not the kid's fault. Sometimes it's not even the parents' fault because, well, they just don't have the money or the funds. It's not a case of them wasting the money, it's just not there. And so it's a call to charity to say, look, help provide support for these kids so that they can go to school with appropriate shoes and uniforms and bags and gear and things like that. Now, every school, well, unless it's a private school, I guess, most government schools are going to have a portion of their students who are in this condition. It's not nice, certainly there. And I mean, yeah, funds available to the impoverished have gone up, but, well, advocacy groups are saying that it's not enough, that we need to help things out. That also comes back to the question of, well, there's 2 parts to it, really. One is, how much money do you need to be comfortable? And should a social welfare net provide a comfortable life? Or is it a means to provide safety to the point that you can continue to job search or build skills so that you can then move back into employment? It's a safety net to make sure that it's not going to be comfortable, but you're not going to die. And so, yeah, that's one of those questions of how welfare services should work. Yeah, clearly those in poverty or in impoverished conditions are going to benefit more from an increase. Clearly, they're below the point where more money doesn't mean better outcomes. More money means better outcomes within this such a condition. But you've then also got problems as well that, I mean, people look at people on welfare spending money on alcohol and cigarettes and gambling and things like that. Certainly there are addictive behaviours that are very financially disadvantageous to anybody, but more so when you're already struggling to make ends meet, or struggling because of you're on welfare payments. And the suggestion is, should you ban or limit people's access to it? Well, in general, yeah, but it's unfair to I mean, the counter argument is that it's unfair to have that as a condition of receiving welfare. It's taking people's agency away from them. If it means that there's more money for the kids to go to school or get their school shoes or that sort of thing, maybe. I don't know. It's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't type things. But people still need an outlet, still need a relief of some sort from the conditions that they face. And so an escape of some form. Now, it's not completely escapism. And so these are the sort of problems that face any sort of welfare program, and the idea of being able to direct what people do or don't do with the resources you give them. And some people will flat out refuse. It's the sort of thing with homeless people, that some people will refuse to go into a shelter. So there may be beds available in a homeless shelter, but because they generally come with conditions of behaviour and use and things like that, some of the homeless are like, nope, refuse. Will not engage in that sort of, like, they don't want to commit to those standards because it's an impost. And they're like, no, I'm good. Yeah, some people, well, do want help, but they don't want conditions attached. So it's a problem. And as rents outpace, cost of housing outpaces wages and cost of living rises, sadly, I think we're just going to see more people reach this impoverished line. And I don't know that social security completely is the answer. I don't think it is. I mean, increased wages are great, but yeah, I I don't know. And then you've also got disparity of where these people are in the country. I mean, yep, some will be in the cities, but I think a lot more of them are regional. Yeah, it's a hard problem to solve, and that's one I think government's been looking at forever, really.